Welcome to Skechcraft, the podcast for art, design, and process junkies. I'm Rob Duenas, art director for Game Fan Magazine and Artist Esquire. This is an unedited podcast, which means that there is some cursing from time to time, so please be aware. Thanks for listening, and here we go. Okay, hey, I'm back. So, Sketch Rant. Let's see, it's been about a month since the last Sketch Rant. So, let's get to it. Alright guys, so let's see how well I deal with this topic. Let's talk about eating your crust or whatever. Okay, so what the hell does all this stuff mean? Okay, so the magazine, right? So I've been making Game Fan now for a little over a year, and when I came on to do this, I was just supposed to be the illustrator, cover art, interior art, things like that, while doing some other projects with Dave, the same as I was doing at Play Magazine right before I left. But what sort of occurred was Dave had asked me, what would I do with the layout? Like if someone laid something out, could I skin that layout to make it more gamey, to make it reflect more of the game, essentially to make it Game Fan. And so the initial idea was that, hey, the prior art director or whomever would do these basic layouts, and then I would get them and I would sort of skin them. So Bayonetta would become more like Bayonetta. And it would be like a two-person job. And for one reason or another, it basically ended up being me laying out the entire magazine, which I had not planned on doing, nor had I never done any kind of magazine layouts ever. I've been a graphic designer in apparel and stuff for years prior, so I had that. But anyhow, moving forward, every issue kind of got done, and it was like, all right, now get me some help, because this is ridiculously hard to do all by myself. And every issue would be, okay, I'm going to find you someone. And we would get portfolios and samples, and some people would do tests. And what would happen is none of them could just do what I was doing, like in the ballpark. We got close once. There was a guy named Gale who was pretty good, actually. But it was very challenging for him. I could sort of see he was kind of stressed out by it. And even though he was willing to help, the magazine, our production schedule, I think he was assuming this would be full time. And it wasn't, so for on his end would have been more part-time, so he wasn't able to stay around. And that took me back to square one, which I've been at ever since. So what's happened is we'd finish an issue, and then I'd spend 2 weeks looking for someone, and it wouldn't work out. I'd do another issue, so forth and so forth. Now, in between Game Fan issues 5 and 6, there was like 6 months. In that time, I made Girls of Gaming 8 by myself, helped build the website, and then relaunch Game Fan. And we had E3 and Comic-Con and all that in between. So with issue 6, I wanted to do a retro section, and I wanted to do art, I wanted to hand draw the covers, assuming that workload, kind of like on my back of my mind, would sort of push the Game Fan headquarters to find help. And that didn't come. I actually had two friends who kind of wanted to show up. I I had one guy in particular who sat there in his couch in his room and saying, I could do what you do, I could look at what you do and I can recreate that. I'm like, really? So I got them, I had them, I got some InDesign set up and I got the Photoshop set up. And I'm like, all right, now do it. And that never occurred. So I got stuck doing GameFan issue 6 by myself. And then at Comic-Con, said friend also kind of lent a hand and got the same thing. He'd like to be able to help out. So I said, great, here's some stuff to go do. And didn't do it. So I'm sort of stuck in a weird area with the magazine in that I need help. I need help, people. I'm not trying to do the whole fucking thing by myself, but it's not full time, and I mean I can teach, but I'm not here to do the work for people. That's sort of the problem. It's in my opinion that the majority of graphic designers, and I'm pulling quotes here, that I've come across are generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, are people who just weren't good enough to illustrate or paint, so they got around to doing like layout and shit. And I'm fine with that, I don't think you have to be the world's greatest illustrator or painter to do solid graphic design. Matter of fact, it has a lot to do with, color theory and iconography and typography and things like that. And that's great. I've met some people that can't draw worth a dime that are fantastic designers in apparel. But in print, I haven't met them. Mostly because I feel that in print, print sucks. I don't know if you guys have looked around magazines these days. I know you all think, right? And then not you all, but I'm loosely using a term. Think that the magazine designs in most gaming magazines is sophisticated, right? That it's clean, it's trim. Let me tell you what that equals: 0 sales. Because what happens is one, they all end up looking the same, okay? And two, they end up looking more like a glorified newspaper, right? And people tend to think that equals news, and news is faster and free on the internet. So why the fuck should I buy a magazine? So print needs to kind of come back to collectability, and it needs to come back to more interesting layouts, and it needs to come back to effort and design and actually trying to think outside the box. I don't fucking look at any magazines when I'm designing GameFan. If I look at anything, I look at old GameFan from like the 90s, not so much for the layouts, but to make sure that whatever I'm doing is sort of staying true to that vibe. As well as I try to modernize and update. I could recreate an entire issue of Edge by myself in about a week, dude. That is not hard for me. What's hard for me is making GameFan. It's very difficult to get the screenshots set up, to get the amount of screenshots, to get all the stuff that I have to do to make that happen is a very tedious, labor-intensive work, and I tend to pull, anywhere from 16 to 22 hours a day. I'll work sometimes 28 hours straight, and then I'll sleep 8 hours, and then I'll work another 28 hours. That seems to be, the rhythm the final week before I print. And then do all the ads, and then I have to set all the magazines up for printing and do pre-press checks, and I got a pre-flight. I got to set all my PDFs up and then upload them to the printer. It's a tedious amount of work. So what I don't have time for these days, right, are fucking artists who tell me they can do what I do, right, and then fucking not show up, And I'm cursing a lot here, but it's getting kind of ridiculous. The amount of artist bravado I hear on the internet is sickening. When I go on to Facebook and I got these artists who are fans or people want to hook up and network, and all I ever read on Facebook is I feel like I can beat everybody out there. My skills are getting good. You better watch out for me. It's like, shut the fuck up and just make your art, dude. Or dudette or whomever. It's like, you could fucking do what I don't. And half the time, it's art they came up with on their own. So it might be their own characters. Maybe they drew a picture of Harley Quinn. And I'm like, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter how good you just made that look. When you have an editor or a licensing department that you have to appease, or you have a writer that has a very specific vision, can you do that? It's not enough to draw fucking Harley Quinn posing, all sexy like. What if you got to have her doing something very specific to the story, and it has to look in a certain way and meet certain expectations that aren't your own? Now, can you do that? And can you do it now? Not next week, not fucking whenever you feel like it, but can you do it now? And that's the problem that I see 9 times out of 10. Most people want art tutorials, show me how to draw a rub, show me how to draw a head or an ear, and I'm like, that's fucking irrelevant. at the end of the day, it's assumed that when you get a job drawing, right, that you already know how to do that stuff. I'm not concerned with teaching you how to fucking draw, people. I'm not interested in it. I'm not that guy that wants to sit around and help you get past all the fundamentals. I like to show you what I did, right, and let you pull apart from that and extrapolate and wherever it means to you. But the bit of advice that I feel I can share, the stuff that I feel is more important than whether you draw hands or ears well, which is entirely subjective, to a certain point, is can you fucking follow directions, Can you really follow directions? If I say, hey, make me a layout, right, that's 4 pages long with the cover facing right and a back cover facing left and a spread in the center, will you turn that in? Or will you fucking turn in like 2 pages and do whatever the fuck you want to do? Will it be themed properly? Am I going to have to touch on your stuff? In t-shirts, generally I found that an art director, again, quotes, hands up in the air, is generally a guy that has to go over there and fix everyone's art because they didn't pay attention or use the reference that was handed to them or the buyer's reference or things that they were looking for. Instead, the artist generally shirks, right, that direction for, well, I wanted to make it my own. I'm using their quotes, not mine, that they would like to use their own inspiration. It's like, dude, this is not fucking art class, this is commercial art. And generally speaking, right, in commercial art, especially when you're dealing with a licensed property, like Spider-Man, Star Wars, whatever, right, you have very specific rules. You have a box to work in, and the trick is to reskin that box so people don't think they're in it. And it's a nifty little puzzle. That's the challenge. That's the challenge that I like. Being able to do whatever you want, I don't think produces the best result. If you don't believe me, go look at the original Star Wars movies and compare them to the prequels, and you'll see the fucking difference. When you have, limitations, right? When you have a certain amount of movement, it will challenge you as an artist to, sorry, I'm drinking a Frappuccino here. It will challenge you as an artist to do things that you haven't normally done if you are the kind of artist that challenges yourself, which gets me to another point. Just because you would like to do something, right, doesn't mean that that's enough to do it. I would like to be a professional wrestler. However, I'm not fucking good at wrestling, nor do I like getting hit in the head with a chair all the time. But I would like to. That doesn't mean that I go and volunteer for Monday night backyard wrestling, and tell everyone I'm going to be there and let them spend tons of time and effort telling everyone I'm going to be there. And I give them a character and a whole idea and everything. I'm going to show up, and then I just don't show up the day that you're supposed to wrestle. That seems to be my experience with a lot of freelancers. There's all this talk, about what they would like to do, or they really want to, and they really feel, I would love to do this, give me a chance. And then you give them a chance, and it's like, well, I didn't know what to do. What do you mean you know what to do? I mean, I said do this. You said you were going to do it. Yeah, but I don't know. Just lots of I don't knows. Oh, here's another thing I want to give you guys an advice for, right? Being a nice person, right? A nice individual does not equal talent. All right, and what I mean by that is I have a friend, and I don't want to throw him under the bus. So for the lack of a better word, I'm going to say his name is Joe, right? And this guy Joe, right, in quotation marks, is a really nice guy. I don't know one person who meets Joe and goes, wow, that isn't a cool guy, right? Very cool guy, right? Has a lot of talent. However, zero follow-through. Zilch. Nothing. No, can't even like, hey, dude, could you call me tomorrow at this time so we can go over? Nothing. Doesn't matter what it is. Will not do it. Will totally mean to. When he agrees to say, hey, I'll do that, he believes he will. He really wants to. He's earnest. When it comes time to actually do it, though, not going to happen. And it's not just him. I've seen this happen over and over and over again with employers and whatever else, and it's a human trait that I can't fucking stand. And it gets me into some trouble with some people I know when they go, Rob, hey, you want to do that? Can you call me here? And I'm like, no, I can't, And they go, what do you mean you can't? I can't do that right now. I have this and this and this, And it's like, well, it's not going to be that hard. And then they'll try to convince you into agreeing to do things sometimes. And you have to give some people some boundaries. I can't do this. I can't do that. You have to be somewhat realistic. People don't want to hear that. They generally just want to hear, in my experience, again, as a freelancer, I'm not speaking about everyone in the world, but in business relationships, I've come across a pretty reoccurring theme of everyone saying yes to everything and very little actually being done, or being done at the level to which they agreed to do it. And so just because you're a nice person, right, doesn't equal talent. Doesn't mean that you're as good as you think you are, simply because you're earnest enough, or you believe, that you can do it. And one more thing I want to say to this, it's sort of like 10 minutes all up. What I mean by learn to eat your crust. When I was a child, I hated crust, on my sandwiches and stuff. So I would like to cut the edges off or tear off all the crust. And my mother, who sort of grew up with a World War II Depression era mother herself, her mother, my grandmother, was not allowed to live in a household where they could do that. She had to eat everything on her plate. So my mom was very specific. Like, you better eat that crust, You don't fucking leave nothing behind. That's the world she came from. So as a kid, I decided to eat the crust first, right? If I just get through the crust, then I can enjoy my sandwich, And I'd sit there and munch on it, to the point where now I prefer the crust over the actual. I like a bread with the great crust, Especially as something I could dip in or tear apart. Love the crust. And so how this relates to art is all the things that you don't like to do. Like, I don't like to follow direction, or maybe I don't want to draw this character, or this doesn't seem interesting. You better learn to fucking like that thing. Sometimes I don't like sitting here. Matter of fact, the last 2 weeks, I've been so sick. I don't want to sit here and do anything, But as a freelancer, I have no choice but to get my ass to work. Because it only goes so long before, bills have to get paid and everything has to get done. So at those moments, you have to take a deep breath, right? And remind yourself that, yeah, I may be sitting here not participating in the world or something like that, but this is the reward for doing this job. More than the money or fame or whatever else, the fact that I get to just sit here and be creative is the actual reward. Right? I know that seems weird to some people. If you're an artist, you know what I mean. And if you're not an artist, generally you're the people that kind of look at people and go, oh, don't you have a life? Don't you have something better to do? I'm like, fucker, I'm doing it. Like, I have a life. It's called I'm a creator. And being able to sit here and do this for a living is a fucking privilege as far as I'm concerned. And if I don't operate at the absolute best I can operate every time I do it, and I don't push myself, I may not get to do it again. So if you don't want to get up in the morning and draw, and you're like, oh, I got to make stuff, oh, I got to do this, oh, I got to do that, it's kind of overwhelming or annoying, you better fucking learn to like it. Or get the fuck out the picture. Just don't be an artist. A commercial one. Be some person who does this shit for free and for fun on the weekend. And to wrap that up, one more thing, cats, fellow freelancers out there. The terms, yeah, I know I'm an asshole, or yeah, I dropped the ball, and I'm sorry, dude. Right? There comes a point where those words stop just being excuses, right? And they become, how do I say it? They're excuses to begin with, but they do not excuse behavior, okay? Those terms do not excuse behavior. It's good to own up when you make a mistake, but then you have to make good. You have to follow up by producing. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I drop the ball with some clients, or things take longer than I had anticipated them to, but when they get the goods, it has to be not just what they envisioned, but better than they envisioned. Otherwise, you're a real waste of time and money and effort. And I hate people who constantly say, I'm sorry, I know I'm an asshole, I know this isn't so good. Yeah, I had someone out there who listens to the podcast regularly. He's a good guy. Came up to say hi at Comic-Con, and I have an opinion about the name of his band, And he's like, yeah, I know it's a horrible name, but hey, I love the podcast. I'm like, what do you mean it's a horrible name? I mean, don't placate me, because that's placating me. You think it's a great name. Just say, look, I think it's a great name. But at the same time, if you really trust and believe in my opinion, then trust my opinion about this. It's a bad fucking name, and you're not hurting my life. You're representing yourself poorly, and you either agree or respect that opinion, or you agree to disagree. But you can't tell me that you agree with me, but you're going to continue to do it. Oh, and by the way, your opinion means something to me. I mean, that makes no sense. People like that, when you have to work with them, right? You tend to call those phonies, Sorry, man. But that's the kind of behavior that gets. And I don't associate myself with those kinds of people. And my particular friend, Joe, to not throw anyone on a bus here, you know, I mean, I can not have friends too, dude. You know what I mean? I can go that route. You know, like I've learned my good lesson this year is do not sign up friends to help you out with work. You know, make sure that they're people that are already producing on their own, then bring them into the fold. Never give anyone a chance unless they're already producing. That's a really good bit of advice, actually. So if someone's already hooking shit up and they're knocking it out, then they're good to go. If they're doing nothing, but they want their chance to make a shine there, you know, you be very, very wary of that individual. Give them maybe one shot. Everyone deserves the opportunity to prove themselves. Otherwise, none of us would get the opportunity, right? However, if they just hem and haw and they're not motivated, like they're going to kill it, then fucking move on. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So that's today's sketch ramp. I'll see you all guys later. Remember, eat the fucking crust, yo. I'm out of here. Bye.